Just one.
Is there anything?
What's up, Rod? How you going? Sure, it's good to see you, mate. How are we doing?
Oh, you haven't like most of these.
Take a photograph of everybody. So you can all smile. It really works, right? Yeah. Hey, wow, this is out there. Oh, let's take one. Let's grab one because I have to record.
This is the way we get swag.
Yeah, there is swag. There is swag coming. It's supposed to arrive today, but it's probably going to be come next time. Basically, is the deal. I won't even be here.
That's it. That's the way. Yeah.
That's right. Very good. It'll be fun. Yes. So, all right, Nick, you gonna take us?
Yeah, okay, so thanks a lot for coming. Unless you were living under a rock, you know that Google I/O was a couple of weeks ago. And you probably, by the sounds of it, are all interested in a few of the things that were presented there, in particular Firebase. Actually, just while we're at it, how many people are interested in Firebase here?
Yeah!
Awesome. So it's been a really good turnout, and I'm glad you're all here.
I might just do a couple more while we're here. Who's a web developer? Cool. Who's a mobile developer? Okay. Who's an iOS developer? Cool. No, that's good. That's really important. Who's an Android developer? Okay, cool. And who's done anything with Firebase? Like just played around with it a little bit. Okay, cool. Who's played around with the database part of it? Okay. And who's played around with the latest sort of stuff that they've brought out recently, Firebase stuff? Okay, cool. All right, that's great. They're just, because it would be great to get. This is not like a one-way thing. We want to get everybody talking about, hey, like I tried this thing out, and this I got a feeling that it does this, whatever, because we're all learning the stuff, right? So cool. Thanks.
So we're going to start off with having a bit of an overview of what was presented and shown at I/O. As Julie said, this is not one way, so if you've got some comments or some questions about whatever's being shown, then feel free to put your hand up and just talk about it. So firstly, it was called Google I/O, but let's be perfectly honest, it should have been called Firebase. In particular because Firebase is one of the few things that was actually available after I/O. Just to give you an idea of the scale for us that didn't manage to go there, 240 sessions. I didn't actually realize how many sessions there were until I went through every single one of them trying to categorize them. 7,000 attendees. It's a lot of people, especially when it's really hot. You want to get out of the sun. And 530 extended events in over 100 countries. And we were one of them. So thanks a lot to the people that actually made it. It was really hard to wake up that early, but it was good fun. So yeah, it was good. Okay, so the next few slides are going to be a breakdown of what sessions were. I'll go through them quickly, but it's just to give you an idea of what was important at I/O. So the idea is the more sessions that are shown, the more important it is to Google. So obviously Android is the top, with 85 sessions in total. Android in particular was 55. Play Store, obviously business development is quite important. Android Wear is an interesting one with 7, where actually before I/O there were a lot of rumors about Google abandoning their Wear platform. But given this push and given the major changes of Wear 2.0, it's a clear indication that Wear is still a big platform for Google. Google Cast, Android Pay, and Android Auto, not that many. Platforms related sessions, 63, another huge subject for Google. Firebase being the particular standout with 30 sessions. So you can compare 30 sessions to the bread and butter that is usually I/O 55 Android. So it was a huge topic for this year's I/O. services, cloud platform, still important. Just they're clearly pushing Firebase a lot. So you can depend on it being a big platform which they can support and can provide good services for. Web related, now I should apologize. I'm not a web developer, so I know really nothing about these subjects. There were quite a few talks about them, but actually, is there anyone here that knows whether there was something important announced regarding web technologies?
Yes. What's going to effectively happen is apps are going to be modularized, and those components of apps are going to be surfaced in a way that's very similar to the way web apps work today. That it doesn't download everything it needs until it needs it. So it's actually a kind of a crossover between native apps and web apps that they're targeting.
So that'll be really interesting to follow. But moving on. Right, this is another really interesting subject, augmented and virtual reality. So there were actually quite a few talks on virtual reality in particular. So they announced a big platform that I'll talk about in a moment. But again, it just gives you an idea of how important it is for Google. UI and design, well, it's quite important so that we can design things like this. I mean, so yeah, it's good. There's some good talks in there. Other sessions, miscellaneous, they had concerts, they had activities, they had competitions. Certainly by the sounds of it, it looked like great fun. So if you can make it sometime, which I'm sure we all apply for, it's certainly worth going. Right, so moving on to the major announcements. Google VR and Daydream, besides Firebase, is probably the major announcement. They're doing a huge push towards mobile VR, a push that Samsung already started with the Gear VR and their devices. So it's pretty clear the direction that Google's going to be taking. It's just a matter of them getting up to speed with what's already out in the market. And because of the scale of Google, there's a good chance that it'll be very available and probably quite successful if the technology and well, I believe the market demand is there, but if they can get the technology right, and it's looking pretty good with Android N and these reference designs, it should be great. Oh yeah, cool. So let's play this video to give you an idea. I'm sure you've seen it. Let's play it anyway. To give you an idea of what exactly this platform promises.
I'm Clay DeWar, and I'm the VP of Virtual Reality. Daydream is about enabling very high-quality mobile VR. At the core of Daydream are what we call Daydream-ready phones. So we've actually worked with smartphone manufacturers to really understand what sensors and displays and processors you need to have to make a smartphone amazing for mobile virtual reality. And then we've been working with the Android team as part of their newest release, Android N, to build what we call VR mode into the core of Android. We've also been working on building a very comfortable VR viewer, VR headset. And paired with that, we'll have a controller that is really powerful, really expressive, but also really intuitive, something that any normal person can pick up and immediately get how to use. And Daydream is really the experience across all of these things. Great phones, a comfortable VR viewer, and a controller that lets you take really high performance, really high quality mobile VR and have it with you anywhere. Across Google, teams have been making investments in VR. And so one of the biggest has been from the YouTube team. And they've been working on, from the ground up, envisioning what would the YouTube experience look like in VR.
Just with the off-the-shelf cardboard and your smartphone, and the combination takes you into a very, very immersive experience.
We're so proud of Cardboard, and Cardboard's going to stick around. You get a glimpse of the VR experience. And of course, it is just made out of cardboard, so it's extremely affordable. Daydream is something very different. We focused at maintaining a very high quality bar across the hardware, the viewer, the input device, and the experiences. What we announced at I.O. is really the core of the Daydream platform. Daydream itself, the experiences, the VR applications that we've been working on, like YouTube VR, Play Movies VR, and the first phones and the viewer, that will all roll out in the fall. In time, next year, year after that, our hope and our expectation is that really most smartphones that you're going to buy are going to be Daydream ready. They're going to be able to not only be a great smartphone, but be the core of a really, really great mobile VR experience. That's where this goes.
So
seems like the speed of
yeah, I apologize. I'll look into that.
Right, we got through them quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So sorry, just quickly. We've got this Google Cardboard set up with the Guardian 6x9 solitary experience set up. So feel free to take a look if you're interested in that. Moving on, Google Assistant, probably the other major announcement. So I'm sure you've all got an idea of what it is. It's basically an extension of Google Now to be, again, just an improvement on context awareness, being able to be more conversational. It's Google Now is it's interesting in that it's the only assistant which doesn't have a name, doesn't have that personality. So they're trying to bridge that gap by making it more conversational, making it easier to approach. So there's some really cool things going on there.
Just a quick question. I'm just going to grab that. Who uses Google Now every day? Okay. Many people. So does anybody use speech to like remember tasks or like remind me when I get home? Set timers. So set timers is the main thing. Okay. That's really interesting. Do you use it for like sports news or any of the navigation? Right. Interesting.
Definitions of words.
Most of the time when I use it is to figure out if I can understand.
Okay,
And actually find out
when you're interested, right. Does anybody use it for like just like finding out trivia or stuff like that? Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
Wait a minute. Virtual friends across all the different players. So who knows Siri?
Right. So who uses Siri for that sort of stuff? Or any of those questions?
Who knows Alexa?
Does anybody know what Alexa
Watson? Who knows Cortana? Yeah.
So who uses any of those? All of those voice things of Google Now, Siri, Alexa, or whatever. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's just like, and that's for everybody to know, right? It's kind of interesting because I use it more and more and a lot, a reasonable amount, but I'm a technical user, right? Well, perhaps like I'm unusual, but that's cool. No, it's curious.
By the way, that was.
I know that as the second language speaker, this doesn't speak my accent. Anyone can, so I gave up.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think the accuracy in that voice recognition technology is still not that good yet
Right.
for everyday use, Yeah.
In most cases, a lot of
No, it's
tell everyone what you're looking for.
yeah, it's more like when you're in your car alone. Or it's in a case where you know the person well enough in the room where you've got something wrong, you're like, look, just hang on a second, and you say, okay, Google, and then his phones go off, and you say,
Do you use Android Auto by any chance? Do you do a car that enables Android Auto?
yes, well, we've done integration with that, but my car doesn't fit a 2-din unit, so I have to buy a car. Which is why I'm super excited about Android Auto announcement that it's going to run on your phone. So I went to the guy.
Spoilers.
Okay, moving right along. Sorry.
You can interrupt me later.
Sorry. Google is just curious about that. Assistant stuff.
Parallel to this is that some gadgets that they're going to give it a backstory, kind of a childhood, make it more relatable.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a backstory of the computer.
I know.
It sounds That's interesting. It'll be interesting. All right, so I was going to play an assistant, Google Assistant video, but I'm sure you'll get the idea of it. Google Home. Right, so this is going to be the easily accessible, mum and dad go to the store and pick one of these up so that they can talk to Google and just use it as you would use your computer to find things out. using voice. Actually, right. So that's the main entrance to Google Assistant in your home. I'm going to talk about rumors here. There's an on-hub device which is made by a bunch of different manufacturers. There's one on top of the fridge there, and you might notice a resemblance.
It's also got a big speaker in it, by the way.
So it's just rumors, but there is a chance that existing on-hub devices will become Google Assistant and Google Home supported. So it's not just going to look like that, in case it's not quite your cup of tea. The other interesting is they announced that there will be an API for developers to integrate their own specialized queries and whatnot, so that if Google doesn't support a specific voice command, you'll be able to extend it so that the user has whatever they need and want, especially for your apps. I'm not sure you want to watch that.
Yeah.
Well, no, okay, let's skip over it. Okay, Allo and Duo, these are their big new messaging, aka we didn't quite make we didn't win the competition against Facebook, so we'll try something else. So this is Allo and Duo. They're really cool apps. One of them is a video app, and another one is a normal text app. I'm not entirely sure why they're separate apps, but we'll come back to that later. The app on the right is supposed to be a very easy way to integrate with Google Assistant, and it's supposed to be their product, which has this concept of bots. So the bot will be Google Assistant, and it will be able to tell you jokes, it'll be able to tell you information about what you're talking about with friends, and give you context, and it'll be able to do all these fancy things like if you're talking to someone about going to a restaurant, then it'll give you the phone number of the restaurant, and even suggest that it can book things for you. So there's a lot of potential for context awareness in chat, and that's exactly what they're going for here. Whether people use the app or not is a completely other question, but it seems like a good messaging app. So it's got a good basis there.
Will they be putting advertising
Yeah, possibly.
I'd say I doubt it. I think the reason for these for that app, and I think the reason for home is they want to capture queries and data because they want to improve their messaging. You know, their understanding language and how people communicate.
So they use the organic SEO to figure out what like the restaurants.
Right. Well,
They are building a profile.
Yes. Yeah, but also they're trying to figure out how. See, if people go to the Alexi one, whatever it's called, then they're going to lose all those commands, right? Whereas Google currently is collecting all the searches and everything that how people search, what they're interested in, and so on. And they're like, now there's a new avenue that someone might be searching through. They don't want to lose those searches to Amazon. Perhaps. I don't know, but that was my. So I suspect it won't. Now the value is in what you write. Possibly.
Sorry, this is on those that they look like the data data for the website. So what was the encouraging web developers to make sure that their metadata is structured in a very specific way so that it appears in Google as a whole. That's probably it.
Yeah, Allo is the same that messaging app with Google Assistant. The nice thing, actually, you were talking about advertising. The nice thing is it's got a privacy mode, which you can enable, similar to Google's Chrome's incognito mode. So that will be end-to-end encrypted and will be deleted once you leave the conversation or once you delete it manually. So it's privacy has been the big thing recently in the media, and they're trying to do their part to get people to use the app, but also to provide that other part of privacy. So that they're not always interested in all your data. They understand that people want some privacy, and they're giving you that option. Duo, so one-to-one chat. You guys are aware of normal video apps. It's supposed to be using a new codec, which changes bandwidth and ping connection quality, and has this knock knock feature, which allows you to receive the caller before you pick up, which is, I suppose, nice. Probably going to see that in a lot of new video apps in the future. Yeah. That's not that. Oh, but what about these? So what's going to happen to Hangouts and Messenger and their recently announced Spaces apps? Yeah. That's a really good question. We're 2.0. Yeah, so as I was saying, it's a huge announcement. Everyone that's even mildly interested in Wear was really excited when they announced this, because there was a lot of space for improvement, and a lot of what they're doing, a lot of the changes are moving the platform in a really good direction. They're recognizing that users want to be able to be more independent of their phone. They want to be able to use their watch to be able to communicate more easily. Apps need to be easier to access and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be some awesome changes in Android Wear 2.0, which will be available later this year to existing watches. Android Auto, as Julius spoiled, will now be available on your phones. So that's great, because you don't have to buy a new car to be able to get the charge.
So how does it work though?
So it's just an app. Right?
Oh, okay. So
but you don't get that full integration with your car. You don't get the speedometer and access to air conditioning and all that kind of stuff that you would otherwise get in a full Android Auto implementation. But you do get the big interface, which is easily to interact with while you're driving. You get the full ways as well. So you get traffic warnings and whatnot. It just makes the whole experience of interacting with your phone while driving easier and therefore safer. And also, I mean, they're also updating it so that you can connect to your device via Wi-Fi instead of USB cable. Android Instant Apps, right? So I think this is what we were referring to.
Yep.
This could be massive. If it takes off and if they manage to pull it off, it could be huge. Where instead of going to a link and then having to press a link to go to the Play Store and then download the app and then wait for it to install and then run the app and then trying to figure out where exactly the content that you were looking for was, this will, in theory, enable developers to modularize their apps, that you click on a link on the web and it'll instantly, magically, just display on your device the actual native module of your app. So that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on. It's the details are still unclear, so we'll let you know what next comes up. Chromos and Android apps. Actually, who uses Chromos here? No one.
Chromebook.
Chromebook.
Yeah.
Well, that's Chromos, right? Yeah. So I don't know how many of you know, but Chromos devices outsold Apple devices recently. I don't know what period, maybe a quarter or.
I think it was a quarter actually.
Right.
Yep.
So they're huge, and I agree. I don't know anyone that uses them, but schools and government agencies and a lot of companies are just devouring them because they're cheap, they're easy to control, and they do what they need to. They access the web, they've got web apps available to them, and now they're introducing Android apps as well. So the entire Android ecosystem will be available on all Chromos devices. The interesting thing about this is it ties in nicely to Android N's multi-window features. So this is one of the reasons why they support the multi-window modes for you Android developers. So it's going to be very important to test all these multi-window features because they will be used by a lot of people. Android N, yeah. Oh right, yeah. So they haven't named it yet. So they've provided this service with the ability to give you suggest names because apparently they're struggling to figure out what people like. So any suggestions? Nuga? Any spell?
yet.
No cat.
Yeah, that's
Okay. Cool.
Does it tell you how people are going? No.
Nah, it's just a black box.
I think it's because they said that they're going to still decide because they don't want it to be called Navy McNameface.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Sweet. So if you really want to share your name idea, just go there. Android Studio. There were some really cool things announced in Android Studio. Actually, who uses Android Studio here? Yeah. Awesome. All right. So I'll just go through it quickly. Android Studio improved build times. They just keep promising us these things, but I just don't see that. New layout editor, which looks really cool actually. I'm quite keen to give it a go. Constraint layout, which is a new layout type, which should allow us to do all sorts of fancy things easily. There's a layout inspector, which basically means that we don't need to open up the device monitor, so we just get those features in Android Studio. APK Analyzer, again, just easy to use tools inside Android Studio instead of having them outside, hard to use. Sample code finder. Actually, that's something that I found really interesting. I haven't tried this, but apparently you'll be able to click on certain classes and then search for code samples to do with those classes. So if you're not sure how to use like a recycler view, you can just click there and it'll give you presumably a basic skeleton of a recycler view, or on a content provider, and it'll give you some basic information about how to use this.
And if you don't code in Android, there's a company, Kite, that's trying to do that across all different languages. So that you will essentially have a virtual assistant as you code, start defining any method. It'll give you examples of how you might implement that.
Firebase integration, yay. So, what is this Firebase? Enhanced C++ support, yay. Espresso test recorder sounds amazing. We'll see how well it works.
Is this out now, or is this we waiting?
Some of
2.2,
these
isn't it?
are available now. Some of them are soon to arrive. So, Android Studio 2.2 was released at IO.
I'm on the canary release.
And generally speaking, you found it pretty stable.
It was stable, yeah.
There was a but you have to go to a previous. It means that you can't use this to run. You have to roll back to a regular version.
Let's give it a go. Install it side by side.
Yeah.
It's a canary release, so just be aware of
And
that.
instant run is nice. It's been around for a while, but
Yeah, when it works, it's awesome. Yeah, and improved check toolchain. So that's cool. Oh, expanded code analysis. I'm not aware of what exactly it adds, but
There's some new, I think there's some meditation annotations and also something to do with you could look at what is the this yeah, but you have to be careful using the libraries because something that's public, it might think it's public, it's not used, is actually used because it's part of the library by the user of the library. So just be aware if you're using that.
yeah, check them out. Code analysis is amazing. Awareness API. Right, so this is, I probably won't play this with you either. Just because, no, maybe I will.
My name is Bhavik Singh. I'm a product manager on the Awareness API. And my name is Maurice Chu. I'm the engine lead for Awareness. And today, we're going to be...
Wait, no, I'm not going to play this. It's about an hour long. Sorry. Yeah, so it's basically an API to be able to provide you.
we could find these slides.
So you just give the location, it'll tell you what's around you. Is that what you mean?
So it'll provide you with context. So what the user is doing, where they're doing it, and what is around them. Are just some examples of the type of information you'll be able to query about the user to be able to populate your app or whatever you're building. So it sounds really cool. It's basically Google providing back the data that they're building on the users, so that you can give your user a better experience. Video sessions, I'm sure you're all aware, but just in case, there are some, most of the sessions are being uploaded to these YouTube channels. Check them out. If there's anything that you're interested in, there will be a video up there, and they're really good quality. So, yeah, check them out. Some references for anyone that's interested. Right, let's move on. Our next topic is Firebase. Okay, someone missed that. So while we set up, I'll play you this video as introduction.
Developing a successful app isn't easy. To reach a broad audience, you'll need to consider your iOS, Android, and mobile web users. And to build for these platforms, you'll need a backend server to store data and support the apps. Of course, you want to get your users logged in, hopefully lots of users, which means your backend will have to scale. Then after you've solved your scaling problems, you'll have to find more ways to spread the word to get new users. But have you found a way to measure all this activity? And oh no, your app is crashing and causing servers to melt down, and you haven't even made a dime yet. Don't you wish this could be easier? This is why we built Firebase. It has all the tools you need to build a successful app. It helps you reach new users, keep them engaged, scale up to meet that demand, in addition to getting paid. From the beginning, with Firebase, you'll have test lab and crash reporting to prevent and diagnose errors in your app. Your backend infrastructure problems are solved with our real-time database, file storage, and hosting solutions. Acquiring new users is easy with invites, AdWords, and dynamic links. And using the authentication component, you can get those users logged in with minimal friction. Once installed, you can keep your users engaged with notifications, cloud messaging, and app indexing. Then, with remote config, you have the freedom to experiment with new features and optimize the user experience in real time. And of course, you can earn money with the same AdMob component that's been monetizing great apps for years. Last, but certainly not least, our all-new analytics component, designed uniquely for Firebase, brings insight into how well these components are working for you and your users. With Firebase Analytics, you can measure and optimize your advertising campaigns, discover who are your most valuable users, and understand exactly how they are using your app. Now, all these components work great on their own and provide a solid infrastructure to build out your app, but they work even better when combined in creative ways. So let Firebase handle the details of your app's backend infrastructure, user engagement, and monetization, while you spend more time building the apps your users will love. To get started right now with Firebase on Android, iOS, or the web, follow these links for more information. Then, to manage and monitor your apps connected to Firebase, there's a web console to view crashes, set up experiments, track analytics, and a whole lot more. And to learn more about Firebase and all of its components, you can read the documentation right here. We can't wait to see what you build.
Sounds awesome, right? Here's John to explain.
Here's the details. So I really don't know all that much more than any of you. I've just had a chance to watch a number of the videos and to get a hold of some of the example code. And what I'm really going to talk to you about is just a couple of the many features that are part of Firebase that you want to explore and take advantage of. This is my perspective on the whole product suite. For a long time, app developers have been attempting to find that pathway from an idea to a thriving business. And what Google has done in this product offering is give you effectively a business model in a box, and the tools that you could use as a developer to take a client's idea or your own idea and incrementally improve it, test your ideas out, market them, and ultimately build a business. And if you're here tonight with the vision of creating a successful app and then business ecosystem around it, whatever we show you here in terms of these specifics, take that idea and run with it, because you've really been given a very, very powerful tool. And I think there's really going to be some stunning success stories that come out of it. So I'm really only going to talk about a couple of the features, as I said. We had Adrian Willis come back in October. So anybody attend his talk? Okay, so at the time, Firebase was simply a database backend, sort of like a Redis key value store, effectively, along with a hosting capability. And it was a very convenient way for you to build an app front end that then had some data back end. that you could pretty much say, this is what I want to store. Here is my app is going to access these endpoints and get back these data values. Julia should correct me here, since you can see he gave the other little example of code that did that back late last year. So yeah, we've already had a chance to see what some of those aspects of Firebase can do for an app developer. So what I actually wanted to talk about was some of the new things and the way you can take these new Firebase libraries and link them into your code development and access some of these analytic features. So I think this is a different video. Okay. So well, I guess I just skipped it. That's fine. What it really tells you is that there are these three kind of components: development of your app and the things that you can do to monitor it. When I got started, it was Flurry. It's the crash reporting and analytics of what was happening in your app. That's all now part of Firebase. So along with the real-time database, authentication, cloud messaging, the storage and hosting that we talked about like last year, I'm going to touch on remote configuration, a capability that allows an app to be deployed, and then how it runs can be changed on the fly. And this, I think, has the potential for really enabling the same kind of A/B testing that we're used to seeing in a web development shop to be implemented as well in an app development shop. There's a test lab, which Julius also has had a little experience with. You can see all the devices that are set up here. Effectively, Google's put that kind of rack of machines available to you in the cloud, so that you don't have to go out and buy one of each of the different kinds of Android devices. And you have a question already? Okay. So crash reporting, when you've actually got an app in the marketplace and you want to effectively grow and build your business, some of these features like the notifications will let you target and connect with particular users. So let me actually get into that a little bit. This is the console that you see. If you go to console.firebase.google.com, and you see there's just a button that says create new project, and you can see I've created one project so far. So that's, I'm not that far ahead of you guys. You have done the same as well. How many have already been picked? Okay, great. So what do you do after you've created a project? Well, you get a JSON file that is going to become part of your app. And then you also get or have to add in a digital fingerprint. So this is the hashed key value. So that's where the JSON file that tells your app, these are all the kind of Firebase services you're going to include, and then you apply this plugin, which is just effectively saying use that file. And then you have to go through a bit of a process to create what's called a signed APK. Now, who's actually gone to the extent of developing an Android app and having it in the Play Store? Okay, so anybody who's done that has actually had to sign it, because the Play Store won't allow you to distribute unsigned apps. So you know that if you go through this process, you effectively are creating a encrypted password. There's another tool, the key tool, that lets you inspect the key store to find out what is that hash value, and that's what you put into your dashboard. So the service, the Firebase service, knows that you really are in my case, it's called Words and Pictures app. So as soon as you've done that and rebuilt your app and deployed it onto some devices, you should be able to get analytics, right? Well, not quite. Analytics doesn't appear instantly, and so the very first experiments that you have with it, you have to be a little bit patient. As the note says here, something will start showing up in your analytics within 24 hours. I found it was about 12 hours actually. But also the data that's getting recorded is not necessarily all streaming into your dashboard in real time. So some of the events, I think, are somehow they have a batch process that's So again, I'm only going to talk about remote config and notifications. I would like to get this one to work. So if I control click or something. I think it just went to the next slide.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
No chip.
As a lot of developers know, there's more to having an app succeed than just building a great app. You want your app to be dynamic and responsive by delivering fresh content to users and quickly reacting to their changing needs. You want to test out major decisions to make sure you're doing the right thing before you push them to your entire audience. And ideally, you want to provide a tailored experience for each user so your VIPs feel like, well, VIPs. But let's be honest, that can be a lot of work. And if you're a developer without a ton of resources, that's time you'd rather spend on other things, like building your app. That's where Firebase Remote Config comes in. Firebase Remote Config is a simple key value store that lives in the cloud. But don't let that simplicity fool you. Because it lives in the cloud, it means you're able to deploy changes that your app can read within a matter of minutes. For instance, say you've just pushed your app out to the world and you suddenly discover that your Swedish text contains some offensive language. How are you supposed to know? You don't speak Swedish. I don't blame you. But fixing that text the old-fashioned way would mean creating a new build and going through the entire publishing process again. That's something that could take days, which is an awfully long time to have 9.2 million people cursing your name. But if your app uses Firebase Remote Config, you could change that text in the cloud through the Firebase console. Kind of like this. The next time your users fire up their app, Remote Config will grab the latest values, update your app's text, and just like that, you've averted a major international crisis. Or, let's say you've got a puzzle game and you're hearing complaints from your players that level 5 is too hard. If you've configured your app using Remote Config, you could tweak those settings to give your players a few more turns and push out that change to the world. But hang on, are you sure that's the right thing to do? What if the silent majority of your users actually enjoy the challenge of a more difficult level? And by making it easier, you're going to turn away your most hardcore and potentially highest paying customers. How could you test whether or not this change is a good one? Sounds like you need an A/B test. That's where Remote Config's audience segmentation feature comes in. This allows you to deliver different configurations to different groups of users simultaneously. So you can try out your new level settings with half your users while keeping the old settings with the other half. But audience segmentation isn't just great for A/B testing. Maybe you've got a feature change that could have a major impact on your in-app economy. Or maybe you just want to double check that some new networking code isn't going to set your servers on fire. You can use Firebase Remote Config to gradually roll out these changes, trying them first with a small percentage of your users before pushing them out to your entire audience. Remote Config can also deliver different configuration sets to your users based on all sorts of different factors, from device type or locale to any audience segment you've defined in Firebase Analytics. So you can send out one welcome message to your New Zealand customers and another to your Australian ones, or only show your review this app button to people who use your app every day, or you can change your home screen experience for your customers who have spent large amounts of money on in-app purchases, so they feel special. Remote Config is backed by a client library on iOS and Android that handles important tasks like caching, dealing with flaky connections, and keeping network requests lightweight, which is always a good thing. To give Remote Config a try, check out our documentation here. We can't wait to see what you build.
Right. Okay, so how do you actually do this? Well, at the end of that video, there is in fact a link that says go and find out how to read the docs on the remote config, and you get to a page that talks about how to do A/B testing, and there's a link in that page that says do Android setup, which leads you to this, which has all of the docs on remote config for Android, quick start. And you don't want to actually follow those instructions either, because if you do, you're going to get into a situation where your testing just suddenly kind of comes to a halt, and you don't know why. You need to keep going until you get to this instruction page. And on this sample walkthrough, they actually tell you that there's something called developer mode. And developer mode is important. It's critically important when you're actually first trying notifications, because without them, or remote config, because without this developer mode, all the configuration settings you do are going to get cached and throttled. So by turning on developer mode, you can send as many configuration requests as you want to the device in a very short period of time and actually see the effects. You got to understand, why did Google kind of put this hurdle in the way of your getting the results you want from a remote configuration change? And the answer is pretty simple. They don't want all of that network traffic. They really want to minimize the amount of time an app spends talking to some Google server to figure out how it's supposed to configure itself. So as you're seeing in just a moment, there's a whole layering of static values within the app, default values that get read when what's called a fetch is done, and then cached values, so that even if you've changed something in your console and the dashboard that you're using to configure your remote configurations, it won't go directly to the device. It has to sort of propagate through this channel. So this is a diagram of this, and particularly with that server side default value, that cached value that's there on the Google server, being the one that tripped me up, because I ultimately had changed what I wanted the key values to be. I changed what they were in the app, and I was still getting something that they had been from a few minutes before, because that was what was getting held by the server in that cache. So again, let's look at some code now. There's a static value in my app. It's shows talking books, words and pictures, and so the name of the book here is getting assigned a value, no value. I just did that, so I have something that shows up. You can see what I've overlaid the code of an image of the app running, and you can see how the edit text on the bottom actually says no value here at the moment. So that app has just started. It doesn't have any value from the remote configuration at all. It's got this hard-coded no value showing up where the user would normally input the name of the book. So then there's a thing called the default value, and this is stored in an XML file that's part of your resources. And here you can see starting book, or starting book 2, as I ultimately, in my playing around, I gave it the name Roma. And then you dump in all the code that says, let me actually establish one of these Firebase remote configuration objects and get an instance of it, go through the process of setting up the developer mode. You can see the comments start and enable and end enable mode there. Doing the set defaults, which is the reading of that XML file. So it's yep, pardon? Oh, that's close. We're right there. So that's reading the XML file that I was talking about. And then there's this operation, and I put a 0 in here. There's a default value that actually about 12 hours of caching of whatever your configured remote config value might be. And so in combination with putting in the developer mode, you probably want to set that to instantly refresh. In any case, when the fetch is complete, you not only need to have successfully obtained the value, but you need to do something called activate. And activate will actually cause the value that's come down to the device as a result of the fetch task to give you something that you can then do a get string against that value, that key, and get back the value. And of course, you can populate strings, integers, any other type gets. And then you see, I just went ahead and put that right into the edit text in the user interface. So this is where I was getting stuck. So here's my console log output. I'm getting successful fetches. I'm getting Roma, which wasn't either in my dashboard or anywhere in my XML. And so this is where I had modified my config parameter on the dashboard end of things to try and return this particular book name. And when I finally got it working, I thought it was really pretty cool. It meant that ultimately I might be able to even create a situation where I monetize something that once I got payment, I could send somebody this key value that would actually then give them access to a particular talking book. So, any questions about remote config before I get into notifications? Essentially, all it does is give you a bunch of toggle switches on your app.
Some give you text to see down.
You've got to decide what those text or values are going to be.
So can you change anything like in your app on the fly?
You could, yep. If you've got some way of writing your app so that a string value becomes a boolean between do I launch this activity or that activity? Now again, some of the examples that they gave in the video suggested that somebody would have had to put an awful lot of forethought into having all the A and B alternatives already available in their app. But things like my example, where you're suddenly accessing an entirely different talking book, which is effectively something that could be fetched into the device as data, that really is giving your a whole different level of configuration, I suppose. But again, that probably could also have been implemented in some other way. What the value of putting it inside the Firebase Analytics is, I really haven't gotten to the stage where I can show it to you, is all of the decisions you make about the configurations that you send to devices ultimately are being monitored as events. Maybe this hasn't been made clear yet. What Firebase does when you integrate it into your app is start tracking every basic thing that your user might do. They open the app, they use your app, they close your app, they integrate with notifications. And all of those events are going to get automatically tracked, so that when you start looking at your analytics screens, you're going to have a much clearer picture of, typically as a developer, about all I ever knew was, well, how many installs did I get, unless I've installed Flurry or one of the other event trackers. So, with this,
if you're offline.
yeah, it's accumulating, and you can see in the console log the way Firebase works is it's queuing interactions. So if it's collected some data about your app usage, it's going to send it when it goes back online. Good question.
So when they're using your app, it might just be storing the data in the app database and not syncing to the central server, but it's actually collecting all just the usage of the app.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yep.
Right.
Right. Another video here about notifications.
The Firebase Notifications console lets you re-engage your users quickly and easily. With it, you can manage and send notifications to your users easily with no additional coding required. Messages can be addressed to single devices, Firebase Cloud Messaging topics, or devices that you select using powerful analytics tools. So, for example, you could send a message to all of your users who have made an in-app purchase, giving them a special offer, allowing you to re-engage with them. The Firebase Notifications console integrates with analytics so you can measure the effectiveness of your messages and explore insights based on your users' activities, so you can grow your application by easily engaging your users through the Firebase Notifications console.
All right, so it took me a little bit of trial and error to get this kind of thing going as well. Here I did 3 different notifications, and it told me that it had completed them before I finally actually had one that successfully showed up on my phone. So the way you get this going, the documentation actually is pretty straightforward once you put through to it. You're adding one of these dependencies into your Gradle file, which incorporates that library into your app. But you do need to read this bit about users who have the app in the foreground aren't going to get the notification unless you write some specific code to deal with the message. So it took me a while to read that far and close, or at least background my app so that the notification would show up. But when it did, it was very nice because what it automatically pops up is the name of your app, and then it provides this notification link that you can then just tap on, and it will open your app. And if you had integrated it into your code, which of course there are code examples that show you how to do that, you could have the notification trigger a particular event, like redeem this offer, or do some kind of deep linking into the functionality of your app. So I'm almost done. What I wanted to show here was that I did have a couple of caveats to the whole experience of playing with Firebase and the library. Since I think they've just been released, there is perhaps a bit of a build penalty. You're integrating some really significant new functionality into your app, and so when I was trying to get my newly improved version of my app to build, it was taking over a minute. And then I found that there was a pretty significant impact on the startup time of my app, particularly when I was trying to do one of these remote configuration fetches. So maybe it doesn't completely get reflected over here in the timestamps of how long it was before the app was the user interface of my talking books was showing, but I was unhappy with the impact that it had, and wondered if there wasn't some way I needed to be a little cleverer about how I exercise the Firebase features, so that at least maybe I got a splash screen up before I make the user wait with a blank phone for a while. Let's see if I can actually get the app to come up on the phone and see what you think, or if it's perhaps. Right, so here's I'm tapping on words and pictures now. You're not seeing anything, and you're not seeing anything, and then there's pink shoes on the bottom. So, maybe that's maybe a little picky. So that's my experience with remote configuration and notifications, and now Julius has.
So what would you use
before I use Firebase?
Yeah.
Well, I've only used Firebase in the hosting mode, so I actually haven't done some of the app integration stuff. Other than Firebase for these kinds of functions,
right.
you can kind of build your own key value store, an app, your app, put in all that infrastructure to have a server that has the database that you decided what JSON structure you're going to use, and all these kinds of things. Firebase kind of just takes all of that care of it, and then gives you analytics to measure how much all of those different values have been used. So some real advantages there, especially when you have development time. Julius will tell you about some of the other features.
Right, so I'm not really prepared for the presentation. So yeah, I talked a little bit about Firebase as a data hosting platform, which is what it originally was. A little bit like, was it Parts? No, what was the Facebook one called? Anyway, the one that just got shut down by Facebook.
Parse.
What was Parts? Right, great. So, so that was. So it's great for storing. If you have data, it's just like JSON. You can push that up. I don't know. I imagine that a number of people here may actually be quite interested in that part of Firebase, because it's just a place to store all your entities of data. You know, you have someone who's on a website and they want to create a new booking, you send that booking up somewhere, and you can store all of that sort of stuff. So for a small business, it's pretty good. I reckon it's what I would use if I'm doing it, and I think it scales reasonably well. It's very simple. It's a different kind of. You have to be careful with your data structure. It's not really like a SQL, like searching database sort of thing. It's more of a flat sort of structure with a bunch of different entities, and you have to kind of deal with the relationships to some degree yourself. You're just going to grab all the data. But that's not really. So what I have done is I am interested in some of these things, specifically. Look here, there are a bunch of things. There's analytics, there's cloud messaging, there's authentication. I haven't looked at that. The real-time database, that's storage, hosting, remote config. I don't know anything about that except for my hosting. Remote config I now know a bit about. Test lab is really important, interesting to me, so I play with that. Crash reporting and notifications. So those are the four things: notifications, crash reporting, test lab, and so I'll have a little quick chat with you about analytics. The first thing I should say is that my take on Firebase, when I talked to the people there, was they've changed everything else. Like, why did you change GTM to SCM, and especially if it's like just the same thing? Like, what's the point? And they said, yeah, it's totally the same technology underneath. We've done it because we basically want iOS developers to come and use our notification system. It's been around for ages. It works very well, but because it's got Google in the name, people think, oh, it might only be Android or not work with this or whatever. But I think they've got iOS users who are using Firebase for storing their data. So they were like, well, we can just say, hey, notifications too. So I think all of this, as far as I've seen, and I could be wrong, but all of this stuff is cross-platform. Like available to be used with other platforms, which I think is cool. So we've got a customer who's like, oh, we're going to do some notification stuff, and we're going to use this because it works and it's easy, and they don't have to build, a whole lot of stuff for it. Yeah. So I'll just quickly run through. The authentication part is really interesting. If you are setting up a bunch of users on your website and you want to authenticate them, there are a number of different ways that they can access through using Facebook or iOS, or Google, Facebook, Twitter, Google. You can get a really simple way to authenticate them, so you don't have to worry about the authentication so much. You just use somebody else's already sort of that person's user in somebody else's system. So that's neat if you've got an application like that. But yeah, so let's jump back to the other stuff. So analytics is just analytics, right? So let's look at integrating this stuff. And it's pretty simple. In terms of Android, you basically add your you set up your application, and this is your dependency here that you add. Make sure that you've updated your in your SDK tools. There is the Google repository and one of these other ones. It was the anyway, a couple of these need to be updated. It might be place services. Anyway, definitely the Google repository. Yeah, that one. Yeah, you have to update those because I didn't, and I was like, why is it finding anything? Let me just also put this into right. So, so for analytics, so I made this guy here, my analytics, and it's not very exciting. But you just have to get hold of one of these guys to get it in instance, and then you can couple of buttons, and one of them logs in, and the other one, sorry, this is analytics. So they both log events, and they're different types. So I just chucked some stuff in, and I was like, hey, let's see what happens. In the case of this first one, it puts these two parameters here. These are the keys, and there are a whole bunch of them here, like character, coupon, currency. So there are a bunch that you can use that are predefined, which is kind of nice. But there's also like MID and bits and pieces that you can probably just find something that you can use. And in the case of the second one, I set up a counter for the activity that just increments each time you use it.
Does it group these together when it's first send it up, or does it just constantly pinging?
Yes, it does group them. Absolutely. Now, if it works anything like standard Google Analytics, if we found it for offline for 24 hours, one of them we found it for off. I think it's if the device is
Yeah,
it's analytics, isn't it?
so that the events have to be processed by the Google servers within 24 hours of them being sent. Otherwise, it will just I don't know if that still applies to.
No, I don't. And I'm just saying that, like, just given that they're basically taking the same stuff and repackaging a lot of it, such as the GTM stuff to the SEM, the cloud messaging, that's the push messaging. I'm just saying there's a possibility that given that we've seen this behavior in Google Analytics, maybe Firebase Analytics uses the same thing. So yes, the batching occurs, but just bear in mind that if the device is offline, we might lose analytics. So right, so that's cool. So there's really, as you can see, not much to it. In terms of my Gradle file, here they are here in Firebase. So it's this one here that I've hovered over, and that's all I did. This application doesn't even have it doesn't subclass an application. It hasn't got an application class and subclass an application. So it's not like you have to go and set up. It does
Really behind the scenes.
It's really behind the scenes. Yeah, it does have this JSON file. So you have to download that. That's exactly the same as the process that John mentioned before. Really not a lot to do. It just works. There's nothing much. It's just surprising how little configuration there is. You put this guy in here. You've got to have this guy. And you do need to have this here as well. Right. So let's go and look at the console. I think that's kind of interesting. The console design was designed by Robin Europe, who's so here's my console. So here's my application. And this is like, you can find out all the secrets about my application, such as the analytics. And it does take a while. It's something that I found really frustrating. I actually wondered whether maybe there's a developer option configuration set for analytics. I haven't looked at it, but seeing what John mentioned before, it made me wonder whether that's possible. So, so there's a reasonably pretty console here with different bits of information. The thing, anyway, yeah. So, well, when I looked at it before, I think New Zealand was there, but I yeah. But it's a pretty good film. Oh, it might be. I've tried some other devices now, and they might be set up for a country or something. But yeah, that's you can dig into your different like your events. So the one that I set up was
All the rest of it are already out of the box. You get those.
absolutely. So that's right, John. I didn't do any of this. I only set up this guy here, which is kind of interesting, right? So here we can go and oh, that's so
Female.
so I don't know how that the age or gender is populated. I haven't gone as far as that.
If it was in similar to Google Earth, it's like a planet with one, there would be certain number of users who would show those stats.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's great. But I don't even know how it would know my gender. I'm
Well, if you're using Facebook Better at authentication. Google one.
maybe it's got another one just for Google. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, you can dig in a bit further into different things. So there's kind of nothing much to it. The amount of lack of configuration is extraordinary and kind of nice when you just want to get going really quickly. As a lazy developer, that's my opinion.
The
So-
range of filters is really interesting because it lets you actually go to your app version amongst other things, which could be very useful.
The other thing is you can set up funnels. That's for, I mean, anyone who's done analytics will probably know these things way better than I do, but how people are, you can sort of set up pathways and you can say, well, if someone's taking this pathway or that pathway through your application. Yeah, so I don't know really about a number of other things, but from a developer point of view, simple. That's kind of that's what I'm into. Let's quickly jump into something else then, which is okay, so this one here is okay, so this one's being my push messaging one. Right, so this is the notifications. So this activity isn't clicking very much. This is just me mucking around with checking that play services is available and showing the programs all this does is I've got a button in a screen, and when you select the button, it goes and gets the token that's used for push messaging. So when you register with for push messaging, you go and grab, you get a token from Google, and that token is then you supply that to the third-party server, so your server can direct messages to specific people or to devices of people, I should say. So anyway, it just displays the token. It's sort of just a test. So let's try that out. I have. Actually, sorry. Before I go analytics, I want to say here an example of analytics. So once you set up analytics, you can use a bunch of commands from here onwards. You can see them. So set prop blah blah blah, something, some other stuff here, and then you end up with basically logcat running in such a way that you can see the events that you're logging for analytics. So I'm currently was connected to this device here. Just connect to it. Okay, cool. So, great. Okay, so and if we go to the analytics part of this, this is the now I'm looking at the help text for getting started. So how do you set up your analytics? They give you these. They give you this information that allows you to view against your debug log. So here I've got that set up ready to go, and here I've got my application, which is
You didn't have to wait a minute.
Well, the application is pretty straightforward. But it is still taking a little while. So I've just got a. So we'll bring those push the device up, and we can see the logs being through, which is nice because that gives you an idea of what's being stored. Yeah, so there's the application style. Okay, yeah. So here's my Firebase cloud messaging. And so yeah, there's my token there. So that's the token for push messaging, right? And then the other thing I wanted to look at was index. So this is where going through this, I'll split between them. So not too much is happening here. I'm going to say that like it's connected to the service. Let's go and create one of these events. So look, it is created something with item name of event one and origin test. And let's have a look at creating the other event, which is the so this is equal with this item name of event two and quantity of one. That's what I'm saying to it. And then this is this should be a count. This one can't get bigger and bigger. So you can kind of get an idea of, you know that you are creating analytics, which is really nice, right? How it gets there is kind of out of your hands and a bit frustrating because you kind of want to see it happen, but it's really handy to have. Cool. Let's just now quick notifications. So as John pointed out, if you're inside the application and you don't create if you're inside the application and a push message comes through, the notification won't appear.
Because you're already in the app. The point of the notification is to
Get
take the user into the app. So
correct. So I'm just going to go to notifications. This is quite interesting because you can do time-based things here. So that was, I think, a really big thing in the talk.
Julius, I want to ask, does the notification still work if your app is killed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the notification is handled by something else. Getting notification to the device is not handled by you. So if the application dies when you are showing the notification, then you lose the notification because as far as it's concerned, it's delivered the notification to you. To the application. So you could say message. We can also create that type of message, such as okay. Now this part's kind of important. The custom data is where you put the key value pairs. That's if the notification gets appeared, the message comes through, and then you want to do something with it. The intent holds these key value pairs, and you can pull the key set, the key and the keys and the intent that comes through, and look at the value and do what you want. So you might have a key of like say properties, and property with a property ID. You might put a property ID and the ID, the value of the ID there, and it will take you through and view the property and pass that ID through to the activity that's going to be yours or whatever. So an implementation of that would be activity. Okay, so here's an example of this is the launch activity. Here I can look at the extras, check I've got some, go and look at the keys and see if I can find a key with the name 5, exactly. So let's try that as well. So he was fire. And my application currently looks like this. And let's cross our fingers. So I need to go to this guy here. And here's my notification. So that's my the test app is here. Sweet. So there's my notification. I'm not inside the application course. When I click on it, hopefully it'll go through the buttons. It'll take me to the notification one. I should have that button that shows me the key, the token for the notifications. Well, look at that, it worked. So I click on that and get my key. That is to say I went through the screen here. Anyway, just have to trust me. It's just very fast because it just started this activity. The next screen immediately as soon as it came in here, it saw this key. So that's push messaging. I don't really think I can go into that. Crash reporting.
Before he goes on, let's pull flat.
Right, so this is the other one that's kind of important as a developer. So crash reporting is crash, right? Again, this isn't that fast, but it's not too bad. It's much faster. It's take a very, very long time to come through. So here I've got one that I prepared earlier. And I've created a crash. This button should not be pressed. And there's also a log here. Log something. Okay. So let's go look at the code and then we'll. So that's so here's my crash activity. I've got it's pretty simple. This is Firebase crash. Sorry, I've just this is how to get functionality. You need to add the dependency, otherwise the library wants you to get access to Firebase crash. Much like the one with the alerts and so on. So yeah, so I've got two buttons here. One that logs, just sends a log. You might want to like a good one that we use quite often with analytics is when we get server errors. We can't do anything with them, like 500 or some kind of like server doesn't respond in time or something like that. We'll go and log those things so that when we start getting them, we say, hey, the server needs to kind of need some work.
It's not us.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's been 30 seconds. We haven't heard anything, so could be something else, whatever. And this one, I'm just throwing a crash, so I don't do anything here. Just throw a crash, and let's just see what happens. And I haven't set anything up, right? Like, there's no application configuration other than to add dependency. So let's quickly work into that. And here's my anyway. So here I'll go log something, and then I'll go let's scratch it out. So if I come here, one would expect it to be a second one, but this takes a bit of time, so I'm not going to really be able to show it to you. It took about 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to program last time. So I expect that we'll get the same thing. Right, final thing is test lab. Just quickly show you.
Did it show up in the ADB?
Oh, good question. Yeah, let's just try that. I don't know. I may be filtered. I don't know what the So, right, testing is a big deal, right? And it's not easy, and I can't wait until creative test is expensive to maintain on this session too. So, so here I've created a little test. Actually, this is just testing how this stuff works. So don't get too excited about it. But so the idea of this is that it's an espresso test, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, but what I've done is I've written something that goes into the main activity, starts that, and then it looks looks for this button, checks that it's displayed, and then again with this button it clicks it, and then it looks for a refresh button. So what it's actually doing here is it's looking for the SCN button. The SCN button is the one that is it's the one that goes and looks. It should navigate to the testing FCM activity. So that's the push messaging activity. So it should push that. So it should go into the main activity and move to the other activity. Sorry. And then it should check that. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, check, no, sorry, checks it exists and then it clicks it. So and what would be nice is if you check that there's a token there, for example. So, so I can run that myself. And yeah, let's try it. And the devices are there. Let's see if I can.
Test should foreground it and you would see the navigation happen? Or does it happen so quickly?
No, you see it. It's really fast. Right. So, okay, if you set it up like I have to go to the cloud, that's what's going to happen. Sorry, I've kind of jumped ahead.
You're doing the test in the
I'm
cloud.
actually doing the test in the
Oh,
cloud,
wow.
yeah, because I forgot I set up set it up to do that. So this is an example of testing the cloud. So it's gone and very much doing this back and front. But just we jump into the end where we've got all of these different devices set up, and it's setting them up to the cloud test that. Now, in order to use this, you have to have a paid account. That is to say, you can't. It's not free. Yes, so it's device minutes. What you pay for. And that's one of the tricky things I found with some of Google services. I find them a little bit difficult to judge what the costs are going to be. That makes some sense. So yeah, so here it is. It's doing this thing. It does take a little while because it's got to do a few things. And what I'll do is I'll just show you. I'll show you some results. So it's okay. There's the one that's running now. That's pretty cool. Okay, so the first one that I ran, actually the first one I ran failed. So I wanted to see whether that token was there. But the thing is that I think it failed because it runs so fast that I don't think with the cloud messaging, you know how I said that you just have to have the dependency? And that's kind of it. That's true, but it still does actually take time for it to register with the messaging server and pull down the token. And the test that I ran is so fast that it just doesn't have time to. Well, that string is going to be empty as one would expect. So here are some of the results. See, here's the issue, and it tells you that. Oh yeah. So the error is not the text is an empty string. It doesn't match the view. So it expected the text not to be an empty string. my fifth is that this text view, that's the one that should show the token.
There's some value.
Yeah, it should have some value. It should not be that. So that, and I haven't got the bottom of it, but I suspect that that's going to be the case. So then when I took that out, of course, I got to the situation now, and see it, right? In some ways, the tests are interesting, the ones that fail. So that's that end of it. I guess that's actually. You can watch though in your messages or wherever this is the results of your tests. So there's actually, I think I've got like a calculator to help you figure it out. But yeah, I don't know what that is. It's like 1 minute 15 seconds. So the things that are interesting about this are, I don't know, I think it's a graphical measurement, but I'm not sure when you're setting up, say, to set up this test, the problem that I had was that I needed a configuration for this test. So here you can set up a group of devices, this matrix. So here are the devices that you can choose. So here I've chosen like a Nexus 5, a Nexus 4, I can choose a few platforms. So remember, it's a matrix. It's like I'm multiplying these things out, right? So you can end up with a lot of different things, and they've done two orientations, like landscape portrait. There are also notice like there are limited number of devices, and also limited platforms. So I don't know how it works when there's a device that doesn't run Ubuntu, like perhaps the Nexus 6 might not run Ubuntu because I suspect it didn't even have Ubuntu on it, but that may not be a perfect full multiplication matrix, whatever the term might be, not one of those out, but that's sort of how you set up. But it's kind of cool, right? So if you find that most of your users are on this device, that platform, you can just create your thing and just tailor it towards, 80% of your users or whatever that number might be.
Which of course is something Firebase Analytics could tell you.
True. So let's go to a now. I'm going backwards. I was really wanting to show you. So now, so I was wanting to show you that's actually what we're doing in the cloud on a bunch of devices. I did that presentation from that back to front. I'm hoping you've got the idea of what's going on. So yeah, that's all. Yeah, so that's I didn't make a presentation. I just did the stuff, the hard stuff. I'm not interested in this. So yeah, thanks very much. Do you got some useful pieces? Yeah, we've got a few minutes.
Sorry about that. Windows. Right, announcements. For those of you that are new with us, if you've got anything you want to announce, like you're working on a personal project or work's doing something interesting, or just anything that you want to talk about or announce, now is the time.
No, doing anything? Building
Okay, moving on from there.
Crickets. There are some meetups going on. Serverless is getting started down at AL. Just check out.
And for that matter, if you are working on anything interesting related to Google, it doesn't need to be Android, just need to be Google, either personally or at work, and you want to do like a short presentation on it, we're always welcome to have guests come over and do their own presentation, especially if you're technical or you're passionate about something.
or if you're new, or if it's design related, like if you're new to like material design, you're like, wow, like this is cool, and I just learned this, and they've got these like AI files I can use, and whatever. Come talk to us, come and talk to us, everybody about it.
There's a very nice feature of Firebase. I think that the one that I like the most, which is the real-time database. And I've implemented, I played with Firebase a long time ago about implementing a real-time applications. And I think I can maybe do a talk about comparing WebSockets and Firebase real-time feature. It'd be interesting.
Indeed, yeah. Super keen, super
I'm sure
excited.
some of you guys would be interested in Firebase. Database work, right?
Who come to that talk?
Who come to that?
Yeah. All right.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Cool.
And if you're a beginner, remember, we're all just a one-eyed man. You know what I mean? Give it a line. Like, you just have to know a little bit more and get people talking about it. That's what matters, right?
And it's not difficult at all. It's really easy to implement and it's awesome to use.
Perfect.
It
Yeah.
makes a difference.
Just looking forward to it. All right, so moving on from announcements. April May news, because we didn't really have a GDG in May besides IO, and I didn't get to bore you guys then, so I'll get to bore you guys now. HTC 10 was announced. For those of you HTC fans out there, it looks
You did, yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah, one of the guys. It was really nice. So fingerprint scanner and all that good stuff.
Looks like a great phone. If you're into phones and that kind of thing. So yeah, check it out. Google Live Cases came out at one stage. They're really neat cases that you can personalize with your own images or maps and you can customize them. They're really high quality, and there's a little button on the back that you can customize to launch different applications and different things. It's not expensive, and I'm not entirely sure you can buy them in New Zealand.
Yeah, so I
Oh.
you can't buy them without the credit. I think that's in the States or you have to have a user that's in the States. You're good. Yeah. Then you should set up like a little record. So I'd like to buy one. Can I buy one for you? Seriously. I've got the photo and everything. I've got everything lined up. I was even in the States.
Contraband.
Something out.
It needs the US address.
Yeah, correct. But you have to put in like this US Social Security number. And I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try again.
Let's look on Google to see if there's any solutions.
So if you're interested in one, come talk to us.
Sounds like we got a syllabus.
YouTube Live. Hey, it's in New Zealand. For those of you who didn't know, YouTube Live together with Google Play Music is available for a monthly subscription. Currently $10 on sale in the next 5 days. So if you want to get it now. Before the next 5 days are up. Otherwise, it's going to go from you basically get to browse YouTube without ads, which is awesome. But the other thing that I've recently found great value in is you can save videos offline at a whole bunch of different qualities. And it's really easy to do. So all these IO talks, I've just been watching them while on the bus, or while I'm cooking, or just doing something. So it's really easy to save content to view later. Plus you get all the music. You get, a huge collection, like more music than I ever wanted to listen to.
The link is saying up there. I've been going to YouTube/movies and renting movies through YouTube.
Actually, you're right. It's YouTube Red. I got the name wrong. It's YouTube Red.
Because I think the live might be
Yeah, you can see the link. Oh yeah, Play Music now has podcast support, so it's kind of limited at the moment, and I'm pretty sure it's region locked, but it's coming soon. So keep an eye out for it.
One of the things I learned about stuff like that, by the way, is a family, there's not in New Zealand yet, but there is, and it sounds like it's coming, a family version of music and YouTube Red. What that means is you get, I think, 6 people can use music in your household, and the incremental cost is around $2. So it's like, rather than paying $11, you pay 13, whatever, something round figures, which is a big deal for your family. So look out for that, because that's massive for people like me. It's really
If you've just got a partner that you can share it with, or some friends, your brother. Windows 10. So Windows 10 recently announced that Microsoft recently announced that the Windows 10 anniversary edition, which is coming out now, is going to support Android mirroring of notifications, which is quite we'll find out. Google devices. There are rumors going around recently that HTC signed a contract with Google to produce Nexus devices. So there's a good chance that Nexus phone will be one and there's a strong likelihood, given the time that they release it Daydream, that one or both phones will be Daydream compatible, and Daydream has earlier as the UV update. And finally, there've been rumors for a while about a Tango phone tablet being released in June. So all that is rumors that Oracle so
silly.
Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard that Oracle lost the case against Google, which is great news because, let's be honest, it would have sucked. Yeah, no, seriously. Oracle has said that they're going to appeal. So it's a never-ending story, but for now it's all good. I found this really interesting video about how phones made. Android Studio 2.1. Android Studio 2 and 2.1 have been released. Actually, 2.2 as well. 2.1 is now stable. 2.1 is in development beta. 2.2 is in canary. Lots of new features. Google Spaces. I also mentioned this earlier. It's a neat service which you can access through your phone or web. And it's kind of like a private, you can make it public, but it's supposed to be like a topical chat kind of platform. I'm so sorry. This is awkward. Okay. Yeah. So the idea is you're supposed to very easily be able to go out and grab content and put it into this different chat stream. So you are grabbing content. You are searching for content, found the content that you want, and then it just inserts itself. So you can easily, you and a bunch of people can easily comment on that content, and other people can include their own content and socialize. So yeah, check it out. It was described a little bit like Slack, which was weird. Yeah, it's not quite as flexible, but essentially, yeah.
It was described as a tool for people working together.
Basically, that's an app.
Yes, it's an app and a web. So it's all both.
So the UI for bringing that content into the conversation is
Yeah, so zero, I think? Yes. Okay. Check it out. It'll probably improve unless it gets abandoned. So as I said earlier, we've got this really cool solitary component experience. You guys want to check it out? Or not. Yeah. It's actually quite good. Raspberry Pi, so there was a recent commit to the Android open source project, which involved the Raspberry Pi 3. So that could be really cool. Yeah, if it gets there, nothing else will happen. So yeah, people that like playing around with electronics, it's cool. So Intel's given up on the smartphone processor market at this time, and possibly forever. They did a really good job with their Atom processors, but they weren't ever able to really compete on price and performance and usage. So after spending about $10 billion, they decided to scrap those projects for the time being. I believe they're still supporting